Everyone knows the names: Miami, Orlando, Tampa, the cities that show up in every headline, every best places to live list, every TikTok about moving to Florida. But while the country's attention is locked on the same 5 zip codes, something else has been happening quietly in the background. Smaller cities, the ones nobody's talking about, have been posting some of the strongest population growth, the strongest job numbers, and the strongest quality of life scores in the entire state. Places where a family can still buy a real house on a real lot, where downtowns are actually walkable, where the beaches aren't wall-to-wall high-rises. These are the cities Florida insiders talk about, but tourists and relocators almost never do. Today, we're counting down the 10 most underrated cities in Florida for 2026 from number 10 to number 1, using population data, median home prices, income figures, and cost of living numbers to prove exactly why these places deserve way more attention than they're getting. Stick around, because number 1 might be the last city you'd expect. If this kind of deep dive into the places everyone else overlooks is your thing, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we break down a new underrated city, market, or hidden gem regularly, and you don't want to miss the next one. Now, let's get into it. We start in Polk County, in a city built on water. Winter Haven sits inside a chain of 21 lakes connected by canals, which is exactly why the original Cypress Gardens, Florida's first tourist attraction decades before Disney existed, was built here. Today, Winter Haven is home to just under 60,000 people, and it's the headquarters of Legoland Florida Resort, one of the state's most visited theme parks. But here's the number that matters. The median home value in Winter Haven sits around $291,000, while the median household income is over $62,000. Cost of living data puts Winter Haven roughly 7% below the national average and about 15% cheaper than the Florida average overall. That's a serious gap compared to Orlando, which sits less than an hour away and costs considerably more to live in. Winter Haven gets treated like a suburb of somewhere else. In reality, it's a self-sufficient, lake-covered city with its own economy, its own tourism draw, and home prices that haven't caught up to what it actually offers. For buyers priced out of Orlando and Tampa, Winter Haven is one of the last remaining entry points into Central Florida without the Central Florida price tag. Just north of Vero Beach on Florida's Treasure Coast sits Sebastian, a city of roughly 27,800 people that's been growing at about 1.7% a year, a population increase of nearly 11% since the last census. Sebastian is home to Pelican Island, the very first national wildlife refuge ever established in the United States, created back in 1903. It also sits right next to the Sebastian Inlet, one of the most famous surfing and fishing spots on Florida's East Coast. What makes Sebastian genuinely underrated is the price gap between it and its neighbors. Homes in Sebastian run in the mid-300,000s to high 300,000s, while nearby Fellsmere pushes past $695,000 and Vero Beach isn't far behind. Sebastian is consistently the most affordable city in all of Indian River County, sitting on the same stretch of coastline as some of the priciest zip codes in the region. It's a city built around fishing docks and wildlife refuges instead of resorts and country clubs. And that's exactly why it's stayed off the radar while the rest of the Treasure Coast gets more expensive every year. Palm Coast might be the fastest growing city on this entire list, and almost nobody outside Florida has heard of it. Sitting in Flagler County between St. Augustine and Daytona Beach, Palm Coast had a population of just under 90,000 in 2020. By 2026, that number had jumped to over 114,000, a growth rate of more than 27% in just 6 years. Flagler County as a whole grew nearly 22% since 2020, ranking it among the fastest growing counties in the entire state of Florida. And the growth isn't just retirees looking for master-planned communities. The local unemployment rate has dropped to some of the lowest levels in the region, and a second Advent Health Hospital campus opened specifically to keep up with demand. Median home prices in Palm Coast sit around $365,000 to $380,000, still meaningfully cheaper than nearby coastal markets in St. Johns County. Palm Coast doesn't have a historic downtown or a famous beach boardwalk. What it has is canals, golf courses, and one of the fastest population growth curves in Florida, happening almost entirely under the radar. On Florida's Nature Coast, where the crowds thin out and the springs take over, sits Crystal River, nicknamed, quite literally, Manatee Haven. The city itself is small, only a few thousand residents built around Kings Bay, a cluster of natural springs that hold a constant 72 degrees year-round. It's one of the only places in the country where you can legally swim alongside wild manatees. Zoom out to Citrus County as a whole, and the median home price sits around $280,000, essentially flat over the past year after years of rapid appreciation. Local agents describe three groups driving demand here: retirees from the Midwest and Northeast who can't believe what their money buys, remote workers trading a commute for spring-fed rivers, and Tampa Bay residents getting priced out of Hillsborough and Pasco counties and discovering the Nature Coast for the first time. Crystal River doesn't get the attention of Clearwater or St. Petersburg, both less than 90 minutes south. But it offers something those cities can't anymore: genuine small-town character at a fraction of the price, with wildlife most tourists have to visit a zoo to see. This is the one entry on this list that isn't cheap, and it earns its spot anyway. Fernandina Beach sits at the northernmost tip of Florida's Atlantic coast on Amelia Island, a barrier island with a population of just over 13,000 people. It's the only location in the United States to have flown 8 different flags throughout its history, and its downtown is a 50-block historic district of preserved Victorian architecture, including the Florida House Inn, built in 1857 and among the oldest surviving hotels in the entire state. Fernandina Beach is also considered the birthplace of the modern American shrimping industry. Median home prices here range from roughly $600,000 to $780,000, depending on the data source and time of year. Genuinely expensive by Florida standards. But here's the underrated angle. Amelia Island offers the exact same Spanish colonial, historic district charm that draws millions of tourists to St. Augustine every year, just 45 minutes south, without anywhere near the crowds, the traffic, or the tourist trap pricing. For buyers who can afford the entry point, it's one of the last unspoiled historic beach towns left on the entire eastern seaboard. Halfway between Orlando and Daytona Beach, DeLand quietly built one of the most underrated small city economies in the state. With a population of about 42,000, DeLand is home to Stetson University, Florida's oldest private university, which anchors a genuinely walkable downtown filled with art galleries, live music venues, and a year-round cultural calendar, including the DeLand Fall Festival of the Arts, one of Florida's most respected outdoor art shows. Median home prices sit in the $330,000 to $350,000 range, and cost of living data puts DeLand around 5% below the national average, even with all of that culture and character built in. DeLand also happens to be a center of the skydiving industry in the southeast, alongside its springs, its historic architecture, and its proximity to Blue Springs State Park, one of Florida's premier manatee watching destinations in winter. Buyers coming from Gainesville, Sarasota, or the coast routinely find that DeLand delivers more character and more home for significantly less money than comparable college towns anywhere else in Florida. On Florida's southwest Gulf Coast sits a city that rebuilt itself almost entirely from scratch. In August of 2004, Category 4 Hurricane Charlie tore directly through Punta Gorda, causing massive destruction. 2 decades later, the city has re-emerged as one of the most livable waterfront communities in the state, and one of the least talked about. Punta Gorda has a population of roughly 21,000 and a median household income between $82,000 and $95,000, well above the state average. Median home prices vary depending on the neighborhood, generally landing between $360,000 and $450,000, with premium canal front homes in Punta Gorda Isles pushing higher. For context, that's meaningfully below Naples, where medians often top $600,000. and roughly in line with Tampa and Orlando. The centerpiece of the city is Fisherman's Village, built in the early 1980s, on the site of old fishing docks, and now serving as the town's commercial and social anchor. Add in Florida's lack of a state income tax, and a household income in the $50,000 to $60,000 range can support a genuinely comfortable lifestyle here. Waterfront access, boating, and fishing included, without the Naples or Sarasota price tag next door. Sitting directly between Tampa and Orlando along the I-4 corridor, Lakeland has quietly become one of Central Florida's most dynamic markets, and most people driving past it on the interstate have no idea. Lakeland's population hit 128,276 in 2026, growing at 2.2% annually, which adds up to nearly 13% growth since the 2020 census. Median home prices currently sit in the $300,000 to $325,000 range, well below both Tampa and Orlando, despite Lakeland offering direct access to both job markets in under 45 minutes. The local economy has been anchored by healthcare, logistics, and education, all expanding alongside continued infrastructure investment along the I-4 corridor. Lakeland offers a lower cost of living than similarly sized metro areas nationwide when housing costs are measured against median household income. It's the classic case of a city stuck in the shadow of its two much larger neighbors, but for commuters and investors, that shadow is exactly the opportunity. Central location, expanding job base, and a price point that Tampa and Orlando left behind years ago. Number 2 might be the biggest growth story on this entire list. Ocala's metro population surged past 409,000 people, and between 2022 and 2023 alone, the U.S. Census Bureau ranked the Ocala Metro as the 4th fastest growing metro area in the entire United States. And yet, Ocala remains one of the most affordable mid-size markets in Florida. Median home prices have actually cooled slightly through 2026, settling in the $270,000 to $305,000 range. A rebalancing from the frenzied post-pandemic years, with inventory up over 40%, giving buyers real negotiating leverage for the first time in years. Ocala is horse country, home to the World Equestrian Center, one of the largest equestrian facilities on the planet, and thousands of horse farms across Marion County. It's also become a magnet for healthcare, retirees, and remote workers priced out of Florida's coasts. Ocala checks almost every box relocation guides look for: fast job growth, falling relative prices, and a lifestyle built around wide-open land instead of high-rises. And it still doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. Number 1 is a small city on the Pinellas Peninsula that keeps getting overshadowed by its much bigger neighbors, St. Petersburg and Clearwater. Despite ranking as the 18th most livable city in the entire state of Florida, and in the top 2% of livable cities nationwide. Dunedin has a population of roughly 36,000 to 37,500 people packed into just over 10 square miles, giving it one of the most walkable downtowns anywhere on Florida's Gulf Coast. The city sits at the northern end of the Pinellas Trail, a 75-mile paved path connecting some of the best cycling and walking routes in the state. Just offshore are Honeymoon Island and Caladesi Island State Parks, consistently ranked among the best beaches in America, and for baseball fans, Dunedin has hosted Toronto Blue Jays spring training for decades. The one honest catch: this isn't a cheap pick. Median home prices sit between roughly $400,000 and $450,000, meaningfully higher than the Florida average. But for that price, buyers get a small-town, walkable, golf cart-friendly lifestyle that Pinellas County's bigger cities can no longer offer at any price. Dunedin isn't underrated because it's cheap. It's underrated because almost nobody outside Tampa Bay realizes it exists at all. 10 cities, 10 completely different reasons to pay attention. From lake-covered Winter Haven to horse country in Ocala to Dunedin, the theme running through every single one of these places is the same. While everyone fights over the same 5 overexposed Florida cities, these 10 have been quietly building better numbers, better affordability, and in some cases, better lives. If one of these caught your attention, that's exactly the point. Florida's next chapter isn't being written in Miami or Orlando. It's being written in the cities nobody's watching yet. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, real numbers, real cities, no fluff, this channel covers Florida real estate, relocation, and cost of living regularly. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because next time we might be ranking the cities on this exact list against each other. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.